Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the maiden voyage of our Tuesday webinar. My name is Ben Eric Smith. I'm the Director of Investor Relations and occasional investment counselor, although a lot more than occasionally of late, which is a good thing. But anyway, today's February 26th, 2019, and we are going to talk about Chicago, Illinois. And I'll explain a little bit about these webinars in a minute, all in due time. All right, so here's what's coming up, and I'll explain why there's asterisks on two of these webinars. So on Thursday, coming up 2 days from today, 48 hours from today, we're going to be doing our normal Thursday webinar, Chicago Income Property Showcase, with our Chicago affiliate, who will be talking all about Chicago, why he likes it, how long he's been doing stuff in that market, and going through several examples of actual live properties that he has for sale. The following Tuesday, the 5th, we're going to be doing the Tuesday webinar, which is Birmingham, and it's kind of more of a general overview. It's just going to be one either myself or Joe from Real Wealth Network. We're not going to have any affiliates on, talking about the overall picture of Birmingham. And then 2 days after that, on Thursday the 7th, we're going to actually have the Birmingham one with the Birmingham affiliate. And the little asterisks there, what that means is that you need to actually have a strategy session in order to attend the Thursday webinars. So I'll get into that in a second. All right, so our next live event coming up, we're going to have the live event happening on the 9th in San Mateo and the 10th in Los Angeles, March 9th up north, the 10th down south. And we're going to have 3 different affiliates. We're going to have our Pittsburgh guy, our Detroit people, and our Jacksonville people, and they're all going to talk about, their markets and what they do. And any of you who've been to one of our live events, you know the drill. That's what's going to happen. We may have a special guest come in after that. That's still a little bit up in the air, but for sure we're going to have those three affiliates. So please, if you could register, you can see the URL at the bottom, realwealthnetwork.com/live-events. You definitely want to register ahead of time so that we don't have that scary last minute, oh my God, we don't have enough chairs, disruptive situation. So please register for that event if you could, either one of those. All right, there's me. I already said I'm investment counselor. We all wear lots of hats here at Real Wealth Network. So, and IC is one of the things I do. I've been actively investing in real estate for almost 30 years at this point. Used to live out west and did a bunch of fix and flips in Arizona and buy and holds in California and a few fix and flips there. And then when I moved to Florida about 3 years ago, I kind of divested my stuff out west, and now I've been focusing on, I'd already started in Florida, but then I all my stuff now is in Florida and Ohio. And goal is to get a few more rental properties and then force myself to stop and pay the loans down. Easier said than done, but it's hard when you're working in the industry and you see all these new things coming along all the time. And it's like, ooh, squirrel, new market, but I have to stop myself. Okay, so let me explain a little bit about the Tuesday webinar versus the Thursday webinar. And please bear with me, this is our first time doing it. So we're just kind of, I'll figure out better ways to explain it. But what we were doing in the past is we just had one webinar a week. And the problem is we weren't really playing to our audience. We had a lot of really advanced people on the line that had been investing in real estate for decades and were grizzled veterans. And at the same time, we also had, new people that weren't really sure what market, weren't really sure single family versus multi. And so it ended up kind of being a catch-all webinar for everybody. So what we've decided to do instead is we're going to have one on Tuesday and one on Thursday, focusing on the same market. The Tuesday webinar will be more a general webinar, kind of geared more towards newer folks who haven't necessarily had a session, who have not connected with us, who have not had a strategy session, and it'll just kind of go over the basics, talk about the market, and then ask people, hey, if you want to attend the webinar happening in 48 hours, the Thursday webinar, please have a strategy session with me or with whomever is hosting the Tuesday webinar, and then we'll have a couple slots available, a few hours over the next couple days. And if you're really interested in hearing about the Thursday details, please book a strategy session. Here's how to do it right now, and away you go. And then on Thursday, it won't be so general. Thursday will be only open to those who we've connected with. And essentially, why do we need to quote unquote connect with you? Well, it's a way to kind of qualify you, make sure that you're real, make sure that we're real. Just you talk to us, we talk to you, we make sure we're a good fit and that you're ready to go. And that way, once you've done that process, connected with us, filled out a form or two, had a strategy session, which can be as little as a 10-minute conversation. It doesn't have to be a big, detailed interrogation. In fact, they're never interrogations. It's just a conversation. Once you have that done, we do that, then the doors open. You no longer are only able to access our resources. You much more than just lenders and qualified intermediaries and 1031s and things. You now have access to a lot more. Contacts for our affiliates in our various markets, webinars, all kinds of things. So it's in your best interest to have that strategy session so that we can connect with you. So I hope I did a good job of explaining the difference between the Tuesday, today, general, and the Thursday, more detailed. If I didn't, whatever, we'll get better as we go on each and every week. So let me just repeat. I'll just say it one more time. So thanks for joining us today. And as I mentioned, we'll be joined by our Chicago affiliate in 2 days on Thursday. If you're interested in viewing available investment properties, learning more about their property management, and would like to attend that Thursday webinar, we just need to connect with you. I have a limited number of time slots open to connect tomorrow and Thursday morning. It's first come, first serve. If you're not all that interested in Chicago, because that's the theme this week, if you want to connect, but you don't really care about Chicago particularly, that's okay. Just schedule something within the next week. There's plenty of slots available, okay? So I hope that makes sense. So we help you create passive income so you can live life on your own terms. Most of the people we talk to, that they either live in a really expensive area where they can't invest in real estate locally, or they're just too busy, or both. And so what we do is we find markets around the country that are more affordable, that are still good markets to invest in, but you can actually invest in market X, Y, or Z, buy a house, put 20% down, get a loan for 80%, rent it out to somebody. You don't rent it, the property manager does, and you're actually making passive income every month. Your costs are far diminished by your income. And the goal is, over time, tenant pays down that mortgage. Eventually, you own that little box free and clear, and now we're actually talking some real money. And if you multiply that by 5 or 10 houses, then we're really talking some real money. So that's our philosophy. And you want to invest in real estate, but you don't want to create another job for yourself. You want to just live your life and live your life on your own terms. Maybe have your current job. You're not creating anything new for yourself job-wise, but you're creating a possible future income stream. Okay, all right. So why us? Well, it's, first of all, we're primarily educational. It's free. We don't take your email and sell it to nefarious parties. You're not going to get spammed with anything. And when you're ready to invest, all you have to do is book a session and we connect. Again, it's free. Again, no spam. Nothing costs any money to our members. We connect you with all of our resources. The way Real Wealth Network makes our money, the way we keep all this going, is if I refer Joe Schmo, member, to Houston, Texas. Joe's really interested in Texas, and he connects with Texas, and he goes down to Texas and he visits the Houston, Texas people, and he ends up buying a property. That Houston, Texas affiliate, as we call them, pays Real Wealth Network a broker-to-broker finder's fee. That's how we make our money, not from our members. Most important, frequently asked questions. First of all, we're not a flip network. We're not into flipping. Flipping is great. Flipping is fun. That's all great and fine and good. I did it for years, but it's not really what Real Wealth Network does. We're much more interested in building long-term wealth, not short-term wealth. And so the way to do that is, like I said earlier, you build up a portfolio of relatively stable income producing properties. Number two, if you plan to purchase a property with cash, in other words, you're not going to use leverage, you'll need at least 60,000, and that's kind of at the extreme low end. Most of our markets, the range is more like 80 to 150. But we do see Cincinnati, Detroit, they occasionally have $59,000 houses. If you plan to use your IRA funds to invest in a property, not normal taxable money, but out of a self-directed IRA or a self-directed 401k, then you'll need to have at least 50,000. And the reason for that is that you have to put a lot more money down. You can't put 20%. It's more like 50. So we're just doing the math there. You need to have at least 50,000 in your IRA if you plan to use IRA funds. All right. Number 4, if you plan to obtain conventional financing to purchase, here's the requirements. You need to have a credit score of at least 680. There are exceptions to that, but that's a good rule of thumb. A 2-year job history at a U.S. company. Now, that freaks some people out because a lot of people listening are self-employed. It's okay to be self-employed. So, these come with an asterisk. You just have to jump through a couple extra hoops if you're self-employed, show that you have a history of income. You'll almost always need to have at least 20% down payment. 20% is pretty much the standard. If you buy a $100,000 house in, say, Cleveland, you'll need $20,000, 20%, plus closing costs, maybe $3,000 or $4,000. 6 months reserves are always looking to make sure you have. So, how much is that mortgage payment a month times 6? You need to have that left over somewhere. A low debt to income ratio. That's the big thing that they're looking at. They want to make sure you're like 40 or 43%, whatever it is, debt to income ratio. And then you can't have more than 10 finance properties, which isn't a problem for most of us, but we had to put that in there. Once you're a real estate baron and you have 10 finance properties, you can still get financing, but that's a whole different conversation. You have to go elsewhere. You have to go off the reservation at that point. All right, a friendly disclaimer that our lawyers make us state: real estate purchases are subject to investment risks, including the possible loss of amounts invested. While RWN uses its best efforts and proven protocols to screen, review, and understand the operations of each of its affiliates and their related companies, we do not guarantee the performance of investments offered through them. It's a responsibility of the investor, i.e. you, to perform your own due diligence and analysis before retaining an affiliate and prior to purchasing an investment property. In other words, trust what we say, but verify what we say. Do your own diligence, poke around, do Google searches, talk to people. For anyone purchasing a property, we require you to order an inspection from a licensed home inspector and order an appraisal. Now, if you're financing, which most of us do, the lender automatically orders an appraisal. They want to make sure that the house you're buying in Cincinnati for $120,000 is actually worth $120,000, and they're going to verify that before they loan a single penny on it. But if somebody's buying all cash, no one's going to make them do that. So we do. We want you to order an appraisal just to cover your bases and make absolutely sure that the property you're buying appraises for the value that you're paying for it. I mean, 90% of the time it does, but every once in a while they don't, and this covers you. Here are the markets we're in. Now, the star is Chicago. That's the one we're going to be talking about today, but all the other markets are the markets that Real Wealth Network has determined are good places to invest in, number one. Then we've gone out and found an affiliate or property provider in that market, checked them out, done our due diligence, checked their references, criminal background, gone to the market, had them answer a bunch of questions, looked at their operation, and felt really good about it. We feel good about them. They feel good about us. They can become an official affiliate. So the cities, as you see them, I mean, there's Chicago, there's Cleveland, there's Detroit, there's Cincinnati, there's Indianapolis. Let's see, we've got Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, Montgomery, Huntsville, Birmingham, Houston, Dallas, and way out west, Albuquerque, New Mexico. But today we're going to be talking about the blue star, Chicago. All right, why Chicago? Well, it's got a pretty skyline, and there's a lot of nice reasons to invest in Chicago. Next. All right, here's some factoids about Chicago. The third largest gross metro product in the U.S., third largest gross metropolitan area in the U.S., home to more than 400 major corporate HQs, including 31 Fortune 500 and 300 corporate research and development facilities. And it's really cheap in Chicago. I mean, for being, what, the third largest metro area in the US, you'd expect it to be way more expensive. It's amazingly affordable for being Chicago. And our affiliate focuses not only on the 2, 3, and 4 flats in Chicago proper, but also in the suburbs, that aren't Chicago proper, all the different little villages and towns in the overall Chicagoland area. And it was rated the 5th best city to buy a rental property. There's a bunch of local employers. I'm not going to sit here and read all of them. You recognize a lot of them. Hyatt, Boeing, Orbitz. Okay, single family homes, they sell for 105,000 to 140. I mean, that's amazingly inexpensive considering what we've just been going over. Obviously, that depends on the bedroom count, square footage, and monthly rent. Of course, that determines what price there are. The 2 to 4 units tend to sell from 75 to 95 per unit. So, I mean, just doing the math, if you get a four flat, that's going to be in the upper 300s, which works out to 95 per unit. Gross rent tends to be about 1.25% of purchase price. Now that's huge. We used to always say the 1% rule. You hear people banging the drum, 1% rule, 1% rule, meaning whatever you pay for a property should rent for 1% of the purchase price every month. Well, it's kind of now like 0.75 is the new 1%. In other words, as property prices have gone up around the country, and they have, I mean, everywhere they've gone up, it's really hard to find the 1%. You pretty much can't in the Sunbelt areas, our growth markets in Florida and Texas and a lot of places. But up in the upper Midwest, you can, and 1.25. I mean, that's really, really good. So that's something to be definitely something for Chicago to hang its hat on. All right, you can see the values have gone up, but they haven't gone up California, Denver, Seattle, like, where they're just kind of racing up. It's much more kind of conservative, a steady upbeat. 150,000, looking at the blue line, 150,000 in 2012, and it doesn't have the numbers, but using my eyesight, looks like about 180,000 now, 6 years later. So, I mean, that's a considerable growth, but not scary exponential growth. And it's much more steady than the orange line, which is US as a whole. Now that it's kind of meaningless, US as a whole, because there's so many different markets and they go at cross purposes and different rates, but still you aggregate it all across the entire United States, and it shows that Chicago, both blue and green, is a much more linear, kind of stable market than the US as a whole, which is good from an investment standpoint. You don't have to worry about things racing up and down. Median monthly rents, again, United States rising at a much steeper rate. Is that good or bad? I mean, I don't know. Obviously, as somebody who owns a rental property, you like rents to go up, but you also don't want them to go up too fast, and then people start moving out, and you have a lot of turnover, like San Francisco, for example. Whole characters of whole neighborhoods are changing as neighborhoods are gentrifying to such an extent that people can't even live there anymore. So again, Chicago, much more stable. You can see it's stable and sustainable. All right, Section 8. Now let's just talk about Section 8 for a little bit. And for those of you who are going to join the Thursday webinar, and if you've had a strategy session, easy, you can get in. If you have not connected with us and had a strategy session and you're really interested in attending the Thursday webinar, please book one so that you're in like Flynn for Thursday. If for some reason you're unable to do your schedule or ours, all is not lost. We will have an archived copy. It will be rented. You'll be able to see this again, and you'll be able to see that again. But you do need to have a strategy session. So anyway, back to Section 8. Chicago is one of our few markets that does focus on Section 8. Not everywhere, and he will go over to that in a lot more detail than I'm going to on Thursday. But 80% of the rent is deposited the first of every month by the feds. The balance is paid by the tenant. So the good news about it is, hey, most of it is pretty much guaranteed by the feds, and the tenant is only responsible for 20%, for good or for bad. You got lower vacancy rates, you've got slightly higher rents, but you do have annual inspections, and the annual inspections mandated by the Section 8 program let the investors know what's wrong with the property, and also confirm that it's being well maintained. So it's kind of like anything else. The over layers of governmental control, it's kind of like a dual-edged sword. It's good and it's kind of not good. So either way. All right, go ahead and next for me. Next slide. All right, here's the disadvantages of Section 8. Not all Section 8 tenants are good tenants. Tenant selection is absolutely critical. Yes, I'm sitting here reading this. He will go over this in a lot more detail, but it's people that are having 80% of their rent paid for. They might not necessarily have a firm grasp on how to take care of a place, but they just screen for that. Elevated turnover costs upon vacation of unit. I once had a Section 8, not in Chicago, this is in Arizona, and yeah, there was a few more hoops I had to jump through, a few more things I had to fix that I normally wouldn't necessarily have to fix, but oh well. Higher level of property management is required because of the oversight that's increased. Paperwork and inspections lead to a longer lease-up time. Once the place goes vacant, it's not like, okay, let's clean the carpets and paint it and get someone else in there. No. You got to schedule a time with the Section 8 person, with the inspector. Annual inspections can increase the costs. So you take the good with the bad. All righty, let's walk through a couple examples, and I would like to also point out the Section 8 applies to the Chicago proper multi-unit buildings that our affiliate in Chicago has. They also have single family in the outskirts that don't necessarily have Section 8. All right, so here's a nice example of a sample property. Obviously, it's in the city. This looks like 6 beds, 2 baths. So it's a duplex. So you've got 2 different units. So all these numbers in terms of rent and everything is reflective of both units added up. So I'll just go through these fairly quickly. But the column on the left is if you're financing, and the column on the right is if you're doing all cash. So all the numbers are pretty much the same, except there's no PITI number or no principal and interest. So if you're financing, you put it should be 25% down because it's a multi-unit. So 35,000 down, 3,500 closing costs, 38. You're out of pocket 38.5. Your P&I at 5.25% is 773. There's your taxes. There's your insurance amount. There's your property management, which is going to be 8% of the rent. So every month, your total costs are about $1,213, but you've got $2,200 coming in. So that's pretty decent. I mean, that's a cash flow of $987 every month. And my gosh, you put down only 20%. So the rate of return, and I'm not going to figure that out right now, but it's going to be pretty good. Now, the all cash, your ROI, or rate of return rate on investment, isn't going to be as good because you're out a lot more money. But anyway, there it is. All right, next slide, please. All right, Chicago, Illinois. And this one is going to be 1636 square feet. It's a single family, 4 beds, 1.5 baths. And let's see, same numbers as before, 115,000 down. Only this time you only have to put 10%. I'm sorry, 20%, not 25, because it's a single unit. And just down to the bottom, you've got $622 of monthly cash flow. And on the all cash, it zooms up to $1,132. So, $7,500 a year if you finance it, $13,500 a year if you do not. All righty. Just kind of leave it on that slide there for a second, let people soak that in. Numbers are pretty good. Okay, why Chicago? But massive population, the 3rd largest metro area in the country, diverse economy, young demographic, and for somebody who moved to Florida where the average age is like 80 something, I'm kidding. It's like 50 something. But it would be nice to live in a place where it was at median age is 34, only because it just tends to attract a different type of business and stuff. Low prices, single family homes sell for 105 to 140 and 1.25% of the purchase price. So, I mean, that's fantastic. All right. So we're repeating now, and Tuesday webinars are going to be kind of more of a general thing. This Tuesday we're focusing on Chicago. Next Tuesday we're going to be focusing on Birmingham. And then if you have not had a strategy session, you need to book one just so that we can connect with you, however briefly, and then you're able and eligible to attend the much more detailed Thursday webinar, which again, this week will be on Chicago, and next week will be on Birmingham. So you need to be ready to invest, within about 6 to 9 months. In other words, no one's expecting you to rush out next week and plunk down 20% on a building. But, please be relatively serious and ready to go. You need to have 30,000 cash ready to go and liquid, only because, 20% of these, you just need that much. Plus you need reserves and you need to have closing costs. And another crucial thing, you need to be able to qualify for financing. Now that's getting easier to do nowadays, and it's not as hard as it was a few years ago, but you still need to be able to qualify. And you want to, one of the very first steps is to find out that. And most people are pretty sure about it, but some people are in doubt. So we just like it if you get pre-approved with a lender, preferably one of the ones on our site, because our affiliates really like to use them, prior to calling the affiliate and speaking to them. They don't want to really talk to people if they haven't been pre-approved with a lender, simply because what's the point? If you need to find out if you're able to get pre-approved before we can go anywhere. It's just one of the criteria. All righty. Okay, here's one question. Do those numbers include capital expenditure estimates and maintenance? No, they do not. And if you look at the one of the pro formas, we recommend, over on the left it says, we recommend that you budget between 6 to 8% of the monthly rent. You set it aside for vacancy and maintenance. Now, there's not going to be a whole lot of maintenance because you're buying fully rehabbed properties. They've just had like a full gut rehab where they've replaced everything that they need to based on our published real standards. The roof has to have a certain amount to it, and there's a whole list on our website. They're called the Real Income Property Standards, REAL, all capitalized. All of our affiliates agree to that. So you're not going to have a whole lot of maintenance, but when a tenant moves out, are you going to have to clean and paint? Probably. Are you going to have the occasional maintenance, the occasional turnover? Yes. So 6 to 8% should be set aside. Okay, now the questions are rolling in. How old are these properties? How much is the capital expenditure if the house is old? Well, again, there's absolutely no way to predict what the capex is going to be. I own several properties, and every once in a while you have something come along that you had no way of knowing that was going to happen. But you can predict. Okay, look, an air conditioning unit lasts 18 years. So when I bought the property, it was 5 years old. So most likely, sometime in the next 14 years, I'm going to have to spend $5,000 on a new AC unit. So you can kind of figure these things out. But remember, you've got tremendous tax benefits, which we won't get into here. There's all kinds of other benefits to the properties, and overall, you come out way ahead. And if you do what most people do, they use the tenant's income and the positive cash flow to pay down the loan, so that eventually, maybe 15 years down the road, they have a 30-year loan. They don't plan on keeping that loan for 30 years. They plan on paying the loan off in 15 years or so. So you're going to have, that one, I think it was the duplex, had 2,200 gross rent coming in. Well, right now, you've got 500 or 600 positive cash flow, which is still pretty darn good. But once the loan is taken care of, then you've got $2,200 coming in minus taxes and insurance and property management. Maybe that's $1,800, $1,700 a month. That's quite a lot of income. You have 10 of those, and you're in pretty good shape. How old are the properties? That would be something that on Thursday he will talk about. They vary, but 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. It depends. All right. Let's see. Do the properties come leased? In an ideal world, yes. Typically, how it works is you visit Chicago. You pre-approved with the lender, and you see a property you really like. It's vacant right now because the affiliate, he's in the process of renovating it, or maybe he's almost done. You then tell your lender, hey, I found 123 Main Street. It takes 30 to 45 days for the lender to do their due diligence, for you to get your independent inspection and all that other stuff. Meanwhile, the affiliate is marketing that property for rent. So in an ideal world, and most of the time, you will have, by the time you close on the property, it will have a tenant in the property. Okay, can you speak to the landlord friendliness or unfriendliness of this market, specifically eviction process and times? All right, being a generalist, I'm going to leave that to our affiliate to address, which he will. He always does on the Thursday webinar. He'll talk specifically to that. All right, do we get to do third-party inspection before closing? Yes, yes, yes. Pound the desk. Absolutely. You find your own inspector, or you ask the affiliate for a recommendation of a couple licensed third-party independent property inspectors, and they go through and they inspect it and they give you a full color report. And then you talk to the affiliate about what items they can fix and will they fix them and whatnot. So yes, you absolutely want to get a third party. Alrighty, so the Thursday webinar that's going to happen in 2 days, that is going to focus a lot more on properties. One of the things, like at the very beginning, I talked about how we were it was more of a generalist. We had both grizzled veterans and new people on the webinar, so we spent a lot of time kind of talking about the markets, but then we also talked about the properties. This Thursday, we're not going to spend so much time talking about Chicago and how wonderful it is and the Fortune 500. The focus is going to be more on actual properties. He'll do a little bit of that. You want to know who you're listening to, so he'll touch on that, and so will all the affiliates. But the focus is going to be much more on the properties and much less on the general stuff. All righty, let's see if I have any other questions here. Okay, can we choose our own property management? So, yes, you can, but it's pretty unusual. Most of the time, people who buy properties from affiliate X in Cleveland or Y in Chicago or Z in Tampa choose to go with the property management company that works hand in hand with the affiliate. However, having said that, it's your house. You can do whatever you want. You can go with another property manager if you want. If your Uncle Ralph lives in town and needs something to do, you can have him manage the property if you want. I don't know if it's necessarily recommended, but you can certainly do that. All right, so let me just kind of rehash. And if anybody else, oh, there's another question. Okay, here's a question. Has Real Wealth Network ever done a VA loan purchase on one of these investments? Veterans occupy one of the 4 units, for example. Well, first of all, it wouldn't be us doing it. That would be a good question to ask on Thursday. I don't know the answer to that. That would be something you could certainly inquire and certainly talk to your lender about. And can you qualify for a VA loan? I mean, if you're a VA veteran and you can move into one of the units, then you can rent out the other. I mean, it's called house hacking. You could certainly do that. Certainly. All righty, I'll take any more questions as they come in, but in the meantime, I'm going to read this slide here. If you are interested in attending the Thursday webinar, then here's how it works. I just sent everybody who has attended, not registered, but actually attended, to schedule a time to connect with me tomorrow, and I think it would include Thursday also, but it'd have to be Thursday morning. And it's very limited time because obviously there's only 48 hours between now and then. And me and Joe and Aristotle, we're pretty busy people. We've been really busy lately, so we don't have that many slots available. But if you're really interested in Chicago, go ahead and click that link and set something up and schedule it. If you're not interested in Chicago at this time, but you still have heard what I've said and you definitely want to connect with us so that you can attend all the Thursday webinars, schedule a time to connect with me. Be nice to the people who are into Chicago. Leave the today and tomorrow and Thursday morning slots with them and just book something Friday or next week. And then we will take it from there. I hope that makes sense. So that is it. That does our first ever Tuesday kind of generalist webinar focusing on Chicago. If anybody has any questions, I can be reached at ben@realwealthnetwork.com. That's BEN@realwealthnetwork.com. If you already have an investment counselor and you've already done a strategy session, then you're in like Flynn. You don't need to schedule anything. You can just attend Thursday webinar and have any questions, just reach out directly to your already obtained IC, investment counselor. And if you do not have an IC, you've not had a strategy session, then please book one and we will take it from there. So also, hey, thanks, Joe. Joe also has kept his calendar open. So we will absolutely get you in. If you're interested in Chicago, one way or the other, we will make it happen. Alrighty. Here's a question. I prefer appreciation over cash flow. Is Chicago good for appreciation? Well, again, he can answer that more on his opinion being a local, but in my opinion, no, it's not really an appreciation market. I tend to divide the country up into two different markets. There's growth markets, also known as appreciation markets, and then there are cash flow markets. Now, all of our markets within Real Wealth Network will cash flow. Nothing you buy through us connecting with an affiliate will not cash flow. If it doesn't cash flow, then we won't be in that market any longer. But the cash flow markets are named such because they cash flow better. And they cash flow better because they're a little less expensive relative to the rent. And Chicago is a cash flow market. Appreciation, or I like to call them growth markets, like Florida and Texas markets, they're not going to cash flow quite as well, but they're going to appreciate most likely. They're never a guarantee, but historically they've appreciated faster than inflation, whereas the cash flow markets like Chicago just pretty much keep up with inflation. All righty, will the slides be available for review? Yes, we're probably going to archive, most likely, we usually do. And how did you calculate the 1.25 rent? Well, essentially, the way we calculate that is how much is the property renting for every month? Compare that number to how much you paid for the property. So if you buy a $100,000 property and it rents for $1,000, ding, 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 1%, you've hit the 1% rule because it rents for 1% of the purchase price. So 1.25 is on average, the multi-units that are sold in Chicago, the rent that they get equals 1.25% of the purchase price. All righty, that about does it for us. Thank you so much for joining. I'm not going to repeat myself because I already have 3 or 4 times. This is Ben Smith with Real Wealth Network. Thanks so much for joining, everybody. We'll see you or hear from you on Thursday or on another soon-to-be announced webinar. We're doing Birmingham next week. And the Tuesday-Thursday concept is a new concept for us. We're testing it out, but I think it's fitting for what we're trying to do. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday and see you next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.